But before the show starts, something big happens. Let's go to the Observer. Several weeks ago, Vince McMahon contacted Paul Heyman about the two sides working together against their mutual enemy, which would make sense since the pay-per-view show was scheduled for Philadelphia. The two worked out their own fake shoot and kept it pretty much hush-hush, where Heyman, Dreamer, and Sandman attended the pay-per-view show and briefly got involved, and it was barely mentioned because if it was pushed harder, hardcore fans would see it was an angle. This epitomized the biggest problem facing the industry today. It's not that working an angle with ECW was a bad idea. It's a no-lose situation for ECW, provided its wrestlers don't end up jobbing out for the WWF because it gets them more exposure. It can be a positive for the WWF, in fact. It's something that the group needs to turn up the heat. But both sides, both Heyman and McMahon, were more concerned about putting together an angle that would fool people, which in fact they largely accomplished, rather than an angle that would do business and spike the ratings, which was supposed to be the idea of the whole thing. The fact was, to the casual fan watching the pay-per-view show, they didn't even remember that Sandman threw a beer at Vega and smashed a beer can on his head and juiced, since it happened in a nothing opening match, and they don't know who those guys are to begin with. It was never acknowledged or pushed in commentary, as they were more concerned with fooling smart fans rather than getting something over. And many more angles took place on the show, which climaxed with a tremendous match. The next day, several wrestling officials had fooled themselves, ironically, because such a large percentage of people who gave them immediate response didn't think it was an angle, and super hardcore WWF fans in Philadelphia Live were furious at ECW, and that proved it was successful, forgetting that the majority of people, because it wasn't pushed as an angle, didn't even know it took place. The internet and hotline response to this as the lead story in wrestling confused people into thinking it would mean something to television ratings the next night, but actually, Heyman played it right. His audience will know about it on their television, and he'll play it up big. If his group gets over as a renegade group, exactly how he's positioned itself, particularly with how much more high profile the NWO are around, and he no longer has the monopoly on that market. The next night, ECW crashed WWF on the live Raw, with Taz jumping over the guardrail with a sign that says Sabu fears Taz. It was again blown off, although given a minute of commentary, with Ross talking about a promotion that runs in the bingo hall looking for their 15 minutes of fame. Actually, a lot more happened after they cut immediately to a commercial, which was a Heyman demand, so it didn't look like it was supposed to happen, including McMahon screaming about not letting it happen, and it got over great in Hershey, PA, with the fans chanting, "We want Taz," after the commercial break. So this is a pretty famous story. You've told it before. We'll tell it again now. I know that your old pal Briscoe was upset with you for a little bit. Tell us how this deal came together and what you make of Meltzer's assessment that maybe it was, quote-unquote, too inside.
Well, first of all, as usual, Meltzer's wrong. It was never meant to be an interpromotional angle in any way, shape, or form. That it was something that we did to help Paul get some national exposure for his first pay-per-view. We had talked, we were coming to Philadelphia, the Philadelphia fans, always very passionate. Man, you can't take that away from them because they love their sports teams and they let you know who they love. Always. And the ECW contingent was a very loud, vocal contingent. The idea was Paul needed help for ECW locally in Philadelphia, but also nationally. The idea was to do something that was, quote, not supposed to happen, that would create some local buzz, then be able to bring it back. Look, you think more people are going to see it on the pay-per-view versus the free-for-all? More people would watch the free-for-all than would watch the pay-per-view, frankly.
Right. Of course.
So, again, another reason why Dave Meltzer is wrong and stupid. But then from there, you're going to get more eyeballs on television the next night as well. The idea was to do a little something. Have them come in, cause a disturbance, get thrown out right off the bat. Folks, hey, these guys came down. I came down during, before the show and had a chat with Paul. And And, people are like going, oh, God, for those who know. And again, we were looking for Paul for that local market, buzz, because he wanted to create a big event. And we were going to help him. Did the deal in the free-for-all. Again, where more people would see it than the pay-per-view to help him out and move on. Because if it were real, and if you really did do that, we wouldn't mention it. So it was presented as reality-based as you possibly could at the time. And with that being said, no one was to be smartened up because we wanted real reactions. And what I didn't anticipate, first of all, I did, but I didn't. Goofy Sandman going as far as he did. But
you mean spitting the beer?
No, banging the damn beer on his head and all that stuff. But look, we had security. Everybody was ready. And I said, look, if they do anything, throw them out. I said, if they do one thing, throw them out. And I told Paul, I said, get thrown out. I said, don't get in a fight with anybody. Don't do anything. I said, get your ECW chant going. Do all the shit that you need to do. I said, but, definitely don't fight anybody. And so they do their deal where they throw the beer, and Savio's there, and Savio's got Bradshaw, and our people come down and they're taking them out, and I'm getting into it with Paul, and here comes Jerry Briscoe, and Jerry is ready to kill somebody, and Jerry jumps over the damn barricade to go after him, and I see fire in Jerry's eyes, and I grab Jerry, and I said, get up there and hook Paul and tell Paul, Bruce said, to get the hell out of there. And Jerry just shot me a look like...
No, you gave a code word.
We had a stupid code word, Bachwinkle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Paul. We must have a code word.
And when he said Bachwinkle, when you said Bachwinkle, that's when Jerry looked at you.
Jerry looked at me like, you motherfucker. And at that moment, I knew Jerry wanted to kill me, and I was thankful I was on the other side of the barricade. So they all went up, and they got everybody out of there. So I came to the back, and the whole locker room is basically on the other side of Gorilla with Taker in front. And Taker grabs me, puts his arm around me, and we go in Vince's office, and he says, hey, man, you almost had a real bad scene there. He goes, you got to let me know you're going to do shit like that. I said, okay. Yes, sir. Because the boys were ready to go out and do whatever they had.
They thought it was a fight for real.
Yeah. And then they're like, okay, you guys want to come make a name for yourself? Well, that's cool. We'll make a name for you. Hey, ECW local renegade wrestling crew gets their ass whooped by WWE talent. And it just, it was not. And then Briscoe came back, and I said, hey, I need to talk. He goes, yeah, I got nothing to say to you. Oh. Jerry and I didn't talk for a few days. He was pretty pissed. So the only people that knew about it were me, Paul, Vince, and Shawn Michaels was in Vince's office when I had the conversation on the phone with Paul, so Shawn knew.
So the Philly show draws 11,900. Well, let me take a time out there. If you had it to do over again, would you do that ECW bit?
Yeah, I'd do it. I'd smarten people up.
Any chance you do something like that in the future?
With ECW?
Yes. No, just in general.
No.
What do you think? No,
because again, you think back and it's...
You felt like you were playing underdog and you had to... Like when you're...
It's just you look back on it and sometimes it's just silly, but again the whole purpose of doing it was to help ECW out and be able to get some buzz for their pay-per-view coming up.
The show in Philly draws 11,969 paid. There's about 15,000 fans in the house. A gate of $210,290. By the way, all of that is a record for an in-your-house show.
You're welcome.
And hey, it's the first wrestling show in that building. On